My name is Jason Cleveland. I'm a broker owner at Trophy Properties and Auction. We're doing another cooking video today. I'm really excited about this one. Anthony and I spent a lot of time duck and goose hunting last year, and I kind of told him of a recipe I had in my head to make, and it had been in there for 2 years, and it took him actually doing the recipe for the first time for me to taste what I'd been dreaming about for 2 years, and it tasted great. He even served it as a wedding. So let's go through it. What are we doing today?
So today we're actually doing a canned goose, roast goose in a sous vide. So it turns out at the end just like roast beef. And this is something that I've done with canned goose, snow goose, speckled belly, but people have this mental block that canned goose and snow goose and whatnot.
Speckled bellies, everybody agrees, the rib eye of the sky, they love them, but Canada goose a lot of times, and snow goose would fall into this category. People don't know what to do with them, so they fall back into marinate them and make a popper out of them. But I've had a lot of roasted goose that's really good, and to cook a whole goose like that, you might have perfectly cooked medium rare breast, but then the legs are tough as iron at that point. So this is a great way to separate that off, quick way to clean them, and have really good meat.
Yeah. So the first thing I like to do whenever I'm, harvest a goose or whatnot, breast it out and everything, but I do, soak them in some salt water a little bit, maybe for a day or so, and then I go ahead and I vacuum seal them, and get them ready to go. And properly vacuum sealed piece of duck or goose could last, year and a half, as long as you have a good seal on it, more or less.
Had it last longer than a year.
Yeah. I try to eat it, definitely before the following season, before I go shoot a bunch more. But yeah, so now we have some goose meat here, and I'm going to go ahead and do some final trimming. You can see that there's still a little bit of skin, some fat, and there is this big chewy piece of tendon, some fat here and whatnot. So I'm going to go ahead and just start trimming this up. This is where the dogs come in.
Yeah, these are scraps I feed to the dogs for sure.
Yeah.
On these geese, you want to be able to cook them for a long period of time and make them tender, but you don't want to overcook them. So, in my mind, where I kept coming up with this is just, season them up and put them in a sous vide bag and never let them break over 130 degrees. And then when you pull them out, you can sear them and put that kind of finishing touch on them. Like, if you've ever used a sous vide, restaurants will use them for steaks and a lot of things, but that's where I came up with a long soak in the sous vide for these, and to really kind of help them be tender and not overcook them. Again, we're cutting all the fat and fash out of here. Wild game doesn't have fat like we've bred cattle to have that tastes good. So a lot of times we're cutting that off of a goose or a duck. Yeah,
I think kind of what you get this chewiest part, I think there's this tendon, and it's a little bit thicker up towards the top, but you can kind of see where some of the arteries or whatnot can come out of this meat, but this seems to be like the chewiest part. So over the past couple of years, I kind of learned to get underneath of it, right here, this real shiny spot, and kind of make at least cut out this main chunk of it. And your knife will actually kind of float along it because it's pretty tough to kind of cut through, so you can kind of
if you don't put it at a 90 degree to it, it'll just kind of go down it for a while. Turkey breasts have the same thing in them.
Yeah, this stuff right here is something that there's tendons running all throughout the thing, and you can't cut all of them off, but just trimming up kind of
big chunks of silver skin you want to cut off.
Yep, that's for sure.
When we're cooking this goose and deer tenderloin, 130 seems to be the magic temperature where it doesn't dry out. If you overcook wild game, it is going to dry out. And a lot of people, I've said this a bunch of times before, but everybody wants to serve you wild game kind of cooked in this middle range, and that's when it's the toughest and chewiest. But if you serve it over here medium rare, or if you cook it forever and it falls off the bone, is where you really want to serve wild game. But everything in the middle is kind of where people get a bad experience for cooking goose, and it's where geese get a bad name, and ducks too. I said earlier something about duck fat. Duck fat is actually one of my favorites. So we cut the goose fat off, and we leave duck fat on if we can. But that 130 seems to be good for goose, medium rare duck, back straps, all kinds of wild game is in that, around that 130. Literally on my back straps, a lot of times I get them to 123. I don't even let them get to 130. But some people like it, you know, medium rare. I'm okay with a more rare side of things.
Yeah, me too. But for a lot of people that I cook with, you know, or cook for, yeah, doing that more medium rare, definitely a thing. And recently, you know, I didn't start using a sous vide until maybe a year ago. But since I started using it, I mean, it is great, and you know, a lot easier to cook a steak or cook something like this without overcooking it. You know, you set it, forget it, let it get tender, and then you pull it off, let it rest for a little bit, and then just sear it real quick, give it a nice crust, and call her good.
I took a turkey breast, you know, seasoned it up, sous vide it at 155. So, you know, you don't want salmonella, and, you know, turkeys, you want a little more done than 130 degrees, but I cooked that in there in broth. So I put a bunch of broth from a different turkey leg carnita recipe that I'd done. I had some broth in the freezer, and I sous vide it for about an hour at 155. And then the rest of that broth I made gravy with, and had mashed potatoes and gravy and turkey breast like a Thanksgiving dinner, and it was unbelievable. But again, that was because of the sous vide, and you don't overcook it because it never got above 155 degrees, so it's still really juicy for a wild turkey. That's saying something.
Yeah. So now I got these two breasts, you know, kind of trimmed up to kind of how I like it. Another thing too, you know, I do have a few holes in here from the from some pellets. You know, there was a couple.
You shot.
Yeah, missed the head. You know, hit the body, but definitely one nice thing about this recipe is I do slice it at the end so thin that most of the time you end up feeling a pellet or whatnot whenever you're going through it.
Or seeing a feather that it pulled in there.
Oh, yeah. But I know, like, we did the turkey recipe before, and you had the little fork trick and you pulled it out. The turkey, you know, tenders are a little bit bigger than this, and I just feel like when I've tried it with the goose, it kind of just turns down to nothing. So I'll actually just season this and cook it whole, and then whenever I pull it off, I just make sure to grab that tendon and pull it out.
Ducks, you know, even smaller on a duck, and I just leave them in there on a duck.
Oh, yeah, yep. I think one of the reasons people don't like, you know, wild Canada goose or snow goose or whatnot is just from the blood and the fat and whatnot in it. So if you don't take the time to like really prepare it and get it cleaned and cut off all the fat and make sure to wash all the blood out, I think that's what kind of gives it the flavor that throws some people
the
off.
gaminess. And I don't know why a duck fat's so good and a goose fat we're trimming off, but I can tell you one of my, you know, I love bacon grease and bacon fat and butter, but out of all the fats, duck fat's my favorite, and I trim all the goose fat off. So I can't answer why that is, but that's the way it is.
Well, now that I got it all trimmed up, we're kind of ready to start. I'm going to tenderize it real quick and then season it and start putting it into the bag, the sous vide. So one hot tip I think we did touch on few episodes back, but using a vacuum seal bag or thick piece of plastic to put over the meat whenever you tenderize it's going to keep it from splashing everywhere and actually, you know, keep some of the fat and stuff out of the teeth of the tenderizer itself and make it a little bit easier to clean.
Yeah, on a goose breast, have you ever used the ones that have all the little blades?
Pokes?
Yeah,
it seems like the kind of cheaper one I had, like it gets stuck in it, and then whenever you go to pull it out, you kind of had to like.
I could see if somebody had one that they were comfortable with using that, it would be just as effective as this for this recipe.
Yeah, and especially I think if you're gonna like marinate something, it's going to poke all the holes in it, allowing it to, you know, soak up. And
so that would be another option here if you don't want to use a meat now.
Or
you have one of those.
Or a pan.
Yeah.
You know, take a pan and hit it. If you don't have a tenderizer, you know, find a way to.
Wine bottles work.
Just beer bottles. So I'm gonna get. I have a. So here's my one of my vacuum sealed bags that I took and kind of opened it up. Just a thick piece of plastic, more or less. I'm just going to go ahead and cover up the breast, so that way whenever I go and get to beating on it, it doesn't splatter everywhere. And this is something that the sous vide is gonna tenderize it a lot already, but I still feel like with the goose meat, since there is so many tendons in here,
it's a thicker piece of meat.
Yeah, I like it to be a little bit more tenderized than what the sous vide can go. So you can actually kind of see right there. I mean, it's, you know, half the thickness already. There we go. It is tenderized. Very tender. All right, well, now it's time to season it. So now we're gonna go ahead and season it, and what I like doing is, salt, pepper, garlic powder, Italian seasoning, and butter, and olive oil, and garlic, and onions.
Some more.
Definitely, yeah, exactly. At first, I know I was talking to you on the phone, and I kind of told you what I did and whatnot, and I didn't add olive oil the first time, but second, third, and fourth time I did it, the different Italian seasonings or whatnot, the olive oil definitely brought out more of that kind of Italian roast goose flavor. So, and go ahead and just give her a pretty healthy dose of all these seasonings, because at the end it's gonna go in a bag full of liquid, and a lot of that's gonna, I think, come off of it. But you're gonna slice it so thin anyways that the piece of seasoning that you're actually gonna get, just like a brisket.
It's a thick piece of meat, so you're trying to coat the outside to have enough salt for everything in between. So.
Yeah. Actually, I'll just go, let's see, get some pepper. I'll say it like that too. Whenever I flip it, I might have to actually get a little pepper cracker or something. Okay.
Use garlic powder and minced garlic in this.
Extra garlic. Garlic on everything.
I like it.
Yeah, it's like butter. You can never have too much. That's how I feel.
I feel the same.
All right. Would you like me to wash my hands before I go back in there with salt?
Also.
You want to salt it?
Oh.
Yeah. Hey.
I'll use
Hey, Jason, why don't you go ahead and hit up some of these seasonings? Oh, yeah.
Salt. It's a flavor enhancer.
And whenever, it's gonna go into the sous vide, and then whenever it's done in there, we're going to sear it in a pan anyways, and I like to, pat it dry once you have it and then re-season it.
I do the same.
So, this is good, but it's kind of, especially salt and pepper, I'm gonna redo the salt and pepper before it goes into that cast iron anyways.
How long are we gonna sous vide this? So just to get people we're gonna re-season it, but if it's soaking in that water, not water, but soaking in the butter and the olive oil and everything else for 10 hours or whatever, it's in there a long time. So salt and, having a liberal dose of salt and seasoning on it now, it's not like you're doing this and searing it and serving it.
Yeah.
A lot of it's gonna come off, so it is okay to put a fair amount of seasoning on it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I found that 10 hours is a good amount of time, and it's something that, I've prepared this, one night, and then woke up in the morning, dropped it in the sous vide, and go to work, come back home, sear it real quick, and then it's, like a crock pot more.
How many people did you feed at your wedding with it?
Oh, we had 130-ish people, and I made 12. This is as, hors d'oeuvres, but it took me a little bit to kind of prepare it all, trim it all, this whole process, but 12 pounds worth, and it was all snow goose actually, so had 140 people eating snow goose, and
it's good.
And most of them probably never had goose before in their life, to be honest, and every single person just loved it. It was a good deal, but it wouldn't be an Anthony wedding without a wild game in it at some point. We also had summer sausage too, but now it's seasoned now, so we can go ahead and I'm going to use a vacuum sealer. I love my vacuum sealer. It's probably the best, sort of cooking, hunting related item that I've ever used, especially for small game hunting. I can vacuum seal all my meat whenever it's done. Just something that, just keeps the meat good for a while. But if you don't have a vacuum sealer, you can easily do this with just like a freezer bag, double sealer, something.
So my father-in-law has a sous vide machine, doesn't have a vacuum sealer, and he'll use it on his steaks, but he just has clothesline clips and puts a steak in a freezer bag, just lays it over the side and clips it there, so it's it doesn't open up to the top. So it works. You don't have to have a vacuum sealer bag, but I agree with you. If you do a lot of hunting and processing of food and feeding the family, providing all that food for your family, a vacuum seal bag, a vacuum sealer, and a sous vide machine will really open the door to a lot
Yeah.
of better prepared food for your family.
And to be honest, like in our house, we just have, just two of us. So we go to the grocery store and I might buy chicken wings or pork loin or just something else that comes in, such a large amount. What?
Are you out of deer already?
Yeah, I need to get some from your freezer too. But no, just something a little bit different, than just deer all the time. We can't. It's hard to replace chickens. You can't kill enough turkeys a year to do it. But no, I'll use that vacuum sealer after the grocery store because I might get a big pork loin and chop it into 4 pieces and vacuum seal it and use it as I need it. So it's something that even for non-hunters, it's a great thing to have, I think.
Yep.
But
let's go
ahead and So now we're gonna go ahead and put them in the bag. These kind of get all mixed up anyways once they're in there, so I don't think it makes a huge difference. I'd throw a little bit of onion in there. We'll throw a little bit of garlic in there. And just shove one breast in. We'll maybe go a little bit more. Butter, because butter's better. Right? More butter.
More butter. More better.
Yep. Get all of it in there. There we go. Then I kind of just pour the olive oil in last because that's going to fill up all the little spaces anyways. You want to hold that for me? Sous chef?
Yes, chef.
Is that it's all gonna...
Yeah.
It's all gonna work its way around.
When that butter melts, I think that'll be the
Yeah, it's gonna be good. All right, so now we have our vacuum sealer out right here. One thing, if you are gonna use a vacuum sealer, you do get some junk up here, some juices and garlic and whatnot. I take a paper towel and on like the end outside the bag, just kind of wipe off the top of it real quick.
I do the same thing regardless of what I'm putting in there, fish or whatever. A lot of times you get a better seal if you take the time to wipe that.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you might have something in there and then it doesn't seal right, especially like you can go into your freezer 3 months later and you see a bag that has a bunch of like air in it, and then you'll look at the seal and you'll see a little crack in it more or less. But and so one thing, your vacuum sealer probably has a bunch of buttons on it, but except for doing like the auto seal, I hit the pulse and I just want to pull enough air out to the point where this bag's gonna sink. You just don't want it to flow. If you do auto, it's gonna pull all the juices out and you're gonna have a whole mess in here.
Yeah, it'll pull all of those juices into the machine, and then you have to clean the machine out. So.
And then you have to re-put all your olive oil and everything in the bag, so it just makes a huge mess. So just go ahead and put it in the front here. Go ahead and lock it down. I'm gonna hold kind of the juices up, and I'm just gonna tap the pulse until you start seeing it kind of suck out there. And then I'm gonna hit manual seal. Sometimes on this machine, I'll actually just seal it twice. I haven't taken the best care. It's been used hard sort of deal, so occasionally it doesn't get the best seal to it, but occasionally I'll just move it real quick, go up a little bit, just to make sure it's sealed off. Especially for long-term storage. And the sous vide is probably gonna be fine, especially
probably gonna be fine. And also, if you're putting meat in there to store in your freezer for a long time, you'd run it full force and suck all the air out of it. But you don't need to do that for what we're doing today.
Correct. Okay, well, there you go. Nice and sealed off right at the top. So now we're ready to put it into the sous vide. Now we're just gonna go ahead. We have the sous vide set for 130 degrees. Is right where I want it for this goose. So we're just gonna go ahead and dunk her in, and on this goose breast, we're gonna let it go 10 hours. Now 10 hours isn't just like a be-all number for everything in sous vide. It's just, the longer you do it, the more tender it gets, and goose is a little bit tougher, more tendons, so we want it to be in there for a while. But if you're doing like backstrap we were talking about.
An hour.
Yeah.
Like turkeys, an hour, it was great. So depending on what you're doing, but a goose, we're trying to tenderize it a little bit too.
Exactly. So we're gonna let go for 10 hours. So obviously it hasn't been 10 hours, but we thought ahead and we prepared for this video. And I got this one going real early this morning, pretty much. Same exact, recipe and preparation. So we're gonna go ahead and you can kind of see, all the
cook down. And
oh yeah, all the juices in there and whatnot. So now we're gonna go ahead and take it out of this bag, and we're gonna dry it off and do a little re-seasoning before we go ahead and sear it.
so you don't spill that all over the kitchen.
There you go. Okay.
You can see on there that it's not overcooked. It's still juicy and there's still some color in it. It's not all brown and dry and ashy. So this is what I envisioned of not overcooking it, but still letting the sous vide do some breakdown for you.
Yeah, and the beauty about it is it doesn't get any hotter than 130 degrees, and it's cooking its own juices, so it's never like drying it out. If you put something on a smoker long enough, it's going to eventually dry it out.
Turn into a
brick. Yeah, but in this, it's vacuum sealed in a bag full of juice. So you go ahead and we'll just get this out of the way. And so one thing before we go ahead and sear it, I'm gonna dry it off a little bit and re-salt and pepper it, because otherwise it seems like with all the juices on the outside, it kind of steams it. It doesn't give it a nice crisp bark to it. Or,
it spins too long in the skillet to
Yeah.
get that sear, and then you might overcook it trying to do that. Yep.
And so one thing too is whenever you pull it out of here, if you let it sit for 15 minutes or so, the internal temperature, it's still going to be like rare, medium rare. And then whenever you sear it in the pan, it's never going to bring it up. It might drop 5 degrees, and by the time you sear it outside, it might bring it back up 5 degrees, but it's never going to get past that.
So on my back straps, I use a marinade that I also, when it's done, I put them in the freezer in the sous vide bag, and I drop that temperature back down to room temperature in the freezer. While I do that, I cook that marinade down into a glaze. And then when I go out, I can get a good bark on it because I have more time to bring it back up to 130 degrees.
Yeah.
But if you start right from there to 130 degrees, you're liable to bring it up to 150 degrees. So letting it cool down for a while does give you more margin of error to not overcooking it.
Yeah. So we're just gonna kind of let it sit. We'll season it real quick, but we'll let it sit while we get the pan heated up and everything. Now we just put some butter in the pan, got the pan nice and hot. If we're gonna let it get brown, maybe a minute and a half per side. Since we did let it cool down a little bit, we shouldn't raise the internal temperature too much. It might get up to 135, but it'll be pretty good.
We can check if we want.
Oh yeah, we got the handy dandy little.
This would be the one thing that I would add to the sous vide machine, vacuum seal, and an instant read thermometer. You can elevate anybody's cooking game with those three things.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see it.
Made it
Nice. Oh yeah.
I'd go ahead and pull those. We just pulled them out of the skillet. Do you let these rest? Like normally when you're pulling a steak or something like that off the grill, we'll let them rest for a while, but.
Yeah, with the sous vide, you don't really need to. We let it kind of rest before we threw it into the cast iron, so it never had another spike like in the temperature, I don't think. So, it just.
I don't need to, when I get done grilling one and it's sous vide, if you're never really rocketing that temperature a bunch, so doesn't have the momentum to keep cooking, because if you pull something off the grill and it's at 130 degrees, well, it was shooting back up through there so fast that it will get up to 100. Sometimes it can raise 10 degrees.
Yeah.
Generally, we didn't leave it in there so the whole thing's not firing up through your target range at that point. So you can go ahead and cut it.
Yeah.
Cut it quick.
So we're gonna go ahead and cut it against the grain. It's gonna make it a little bit, less chewy and pull apart a little bit easier. So on the goose, the grain, especially in the bottom half, it runs this way.
Let me pull these tasting nuggets out of the way.
So with a goose breast, the grain runs, the kind of lengthways up here, kind of turns into different muscle groups start to deal, and you kind of gotta do what it is. So I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of slice these things just about as thin as I can get it. Today we're gonna eat this hot, but to be honest, I like it just as much, if not better, cold. And it'd be good in your fridge for a few days. You wouldn't want to keep it like lunch meat in there, for 2 weeks or so. But I mean,
it doesn't have all the additives and everything else.
Oh,
but it'd be good for a week in there. If you wanted to do a batch of them and kind of food prep for a week, you could have a number of meals in 1 week if you did a bunch of them at one time.
Yeah. And to be honest, I've eaten it, just by itself with a little. I love like the Chicago style hot marinara like on it.
Is that your Sunday gravy?
No, a little bit different than your gravy, but no, it's just a kind of spicy sort of pickle garnish, sort of deal. Good on like Italian beef sandwiches and stuff like that, but most of the time I'll wait till it gets cold and I'll put it on. What we're gonna do today is serve it on buns with some cheddar cheese and some mayonnaise and
Homegrown tomatoes.
Yeah, homegrown tomatoes, some fresh pickles. I've been on a little pickling kick. I know you've been receiving. You've
beneficiary
of my garden.
Charring and canning techniques from your garden. Absolutely.
Yes. Yep. All right, so that's how you make the roast goose and the sous vide, and now we're gonna put it on a sandwich, and you can put whatever cheese and toppings that you want.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and get to making our sandwiches. I know that we're all hungry looking at all this meat, so we'll go.
Dinner time, and let's get to eat.
Yep.
More than I bargained for.
It's the wettest sandwich I've ever seen in my life.
I've seen 3 pieces came out of my mouth at that point. My teeth weren't strong enough. I grabbed a piece of gristle and it all slid out, man. Oh, good.
Now you gotta make a whole new sandwich.
Yeah, it's your turn.
We might need to do the reaction shot.
Good.